I am the heir of the Wang Group, the rich heir, the prince of a wealthy family. I debuted at the peak, and when I showed up, I saved the day. I prevented the collapse of the Wang Group's empire, turned the tide, and thought life would be smooth sailing from then on. I thought I'd sit back and enjoy the worldly splendor, but little did I know. I was just the father of the future male protagonist, a mere tool, a background character. Once my role was done, I'd be written off. A car accident specially scripted for me changed everything. I ended up in a coma for 5 whole years. At the time of the accident, Willow loved me the most. So, for the past 5 years, I've been the unforgettable love in her heart. But when I woke up, I discovered that Willow had already taken over as the company's CEO. And I, as her husband, had become completely irrelevant. Chapter 1. I looked at Willow by the foot of the bed, her eyes red as she murmured, "George." Upon hearing the news that I had woken up, she rushed to my side immediately. I glanced at the assistant in a suit and tie by the door, his clenched jaw and restrained expression showing his frustration, yet trying to maintain composure. Willow took my hand and gently rubbed it against her face. She asked, "George, do you remember me?" I pulled my hand back and nodded. With a cold laugh, I pointed at the man by the door and said, "That guy looks like me." "Huh? Is he my long-lost brother?" Willow froze slightly, and then the man standing by the door stepped into the room, giving Willow a deep, affectionate glance before turning to me. "Mr. Wang, hello, I'm Makoto, Miss Lu's assistant." I interrupted him. "Call me Mr. Wang, and call her Miss Lu." "What's this? You call her Miss Lu? She's already married." "She's my wife." Makoto clenched his teeth. "Mr. Wang, I'm Mrs. Lu's assistant." I interrupted him again. "Assistant Ito." I stressed the word, assistant, then added, "In a professional context, you should address by title." Makoto gritted his teeth and stormed out of the room as if deeply humiliated. "Makoto," Willow instinctively called out, about to chase after him, but then remembered I was still here. "It's fine," I said, trying to look magnanimous. "You must have something serious to discuss with him. Go ahead." Willow stared at me, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion, like she couldn't understand me. But in the end, she stepped out in her high heels to chase after him. Watching her leave, my heart grew colder. I reached over and grabbed the little brat who had been playing games by the bed. "But you've got something to do. You're the future male protagonist, aren't you? The one who'll have a twisted, abusive relationship with the female lead, constantly cheating, having affairs with mistresses," I said with a sinister expression. "You grew up reading those tragic romance novels, didn't you?" The little brat, annoyed, swatted my hand away and shouted, "Old man, I order you to let go." I was stunned for a moment, then I jumped out of bed, yanked out the 4, and got ready for action. It had begun, the hunting moment. Chapter 2. I slept for 5 years, and in that time, I only had one dream. In the dream, I was reading a novel, and my son, David, was the cold-hearted, ruthless CEO, the male lead of the story. Because his father died young and his mother remarried, David grew up lacking love, his personality twisted, his understanding and expression of love became warped, and so he abused the female lead in the name of love, mentally tormenting her, physically hurting her. After enduring countless hardships, the female lead finally woke up and ruthlessly abandoned him. Only then did the male lead regret and start a journey of self-reflection. But his late feelings were worthless. His attempts to win her back failed, and he ended up living out his life in loneliness and despair. I spent 5 years cursing in my sleep. Maybe I cursed too much because in the novel, I was supposed to die while in a coma. But suddenly, I woke up. Comparing timelines, I still had 1 year left before I was supposed to die in the plot. I had a feeling that I wouldn't be able to escape the fate that had already been written for me. It has to wrap up, whether it should or not. I let out a long sigh. All right then, I'll use this year to try and straighten David out, to prevent his tragic ending. It'll be the last gift I give him as his father. So when Willow rushed back to the hospital room, what she saw was me giving David a good spanking. He was crying in the corner, his small bottom red from the hits. Willow stood frozen in the doorway for 2 seconds. Upon seeing her, David immediately stopped crying, turning his face away stubbornly, but the expectation in his eyes was unmistakable. He was hoping his mother would save him from my hands, but his hopes were dashed. Willow didn't even look at David. She walked straight to me and took my hand affectionately, speaking softly, "George, you just woke up. Your body is still weak. You just need to call for a nurse if you need anything." In the corner, David's dark eyes grew dimmer, and his little fists clenched at his sides. I pushed Willow aside and lifted the little brat up, giving him 2 more spanks. "What do I want?" "I want my son." David froze, looking at me in disbelief. I said in a low voice, "Willow, who do you think you are? How have you treated my son these past 5 years? You've ignored him like he's heir, and now you want to play the devoted, loving wife in front of me. Do you have no shame?" Willow stood frozen, unable to believe that the gentle and considerate man she once knew, her first love and husband, was acting this violently. At this moment, Makoto rushed into the room. He supported Willow's shoulder and said, "Mr. Wong, how can you hit a woman?" He was furious. Miss Lu has already been through so much with work. On top of that, she has to raise a child on her own, which is why she sometimes neglects David. You don't know how hard it is for a woman like her. For the company, even when clients humiliate her and force her to drink, she grits her teeth and puts on a smile. I've seen all of it. Willow looked at Makoto, her eyes filled with surprise and emotion. It was as if, for the first time, she saw through his resemblance to me and realized that Makoto understood her heart even more than I did. I raised an eyebrow. This little pretty boy really knew how to stir up trouble. If I hadn't woken up, I'd bet that the hospital bed would have become their wedding bed in the next moment. Makoto took a deep breath and said, "Mr. Wong, my words might offend you, but I must speak." He looked me straight in the eye. "For the past 5 years, Miss Lu has been the one struggling alone to manage this company. Do you know how difficult it is to run a company that's falling apart? And you, as her husband, have done nothing to help. You've just been lying here while she's had to carry the weight of everything on her own. How could you misunderstand her like this? It's truly heartbreaking." I was speechless. What did he mean by a company falling apart? The Wong family had worked hard to build this empire. Despite facing difficulties, the company had been growing under my leadership, with rising profits and employee bonuses every year. Yet in his words, it sounded like I had left behind a mess, a broken company. The most absurd thing was, what did he mean by me not caring for the company? What did he mean by me just lying here so easily? Was he out of his mind? I sneered. "Assistant Ito, you're so smart. Why don't you take a guess? Why did I have that car accident and end up in a coma? And why, when I was nearly dying, did I save someone's life?" I continued. "If this company is really such a mess, Miss Lu doesn't have to suffer. She can quit as a board member, if it's so unbearable." At this, Willow's face went pale, and she lowered her gaze, seemingly guilty. But Makoto wasn't done. He argued, But that was 5 years ago. Even if you saved Miss Lu, you can't keep using that to guilt trip her." "How am I guilt tripping her? Talking to a brick wall was easier. I was getting tired of this. You talk like you're just farting. It's a waste of my time." "Nurse, get this guy out of here. He's polluting my air." Willow frowned and tried to stop me. "George, don't." I cut her off. "Enough with the nonsense. You get out too." Chapter 3. In the end, Willow left. Although she didn't say anything when she left, her eyes, filled with grievance and disappointment, kept glancing back. I didn't pay much attention to it. I put David back on the bed, ruffled his hair, and asked, "Son, what game were you playing just now?" Caught off guard by my sudden change of attitude, David quickly rolled over, swatted my hand away, and picked up his game console. "It's Battle of the Sages. You can play it on the computer too." I nodded. "Is it fun?" David's ears turned red as he coldly replied, "Just a time killer." I was speechless. Such a CEO-esque remark. No wonder he's the male lead of a novel. But he's only 7 years old, right? Starting to kill time at such a young age. Doesn't he feel like there's never enough time to kill? I was thinking about this when I pressed the call button, asking the nurse to bring me 2 high-performance computers. David looked suspicious. "What are you going to do?" He resembled a little black cat with its fur standing on end. I shrugged. "I'm going to kill time with you. I still need to stay in the hospital for observation. We can't just stare at each other all day, right? You don't know this, but before I went into a coma, I was really good at games. I even dreamt that I was teaching another kid named David how to play Souls-like games. Want to try? I'll teach you." David immediately shook his head. The nurse brought in the computers and mainframes, but there weren't enough power outlets. I casually waved my hand. "Just unplug my oxygen machine." "No." David instinctively stopped me. I felt a little touched. This kid is actually pretty filial. But then, I went ahead and unplugged the oxygen machine myself. David was speechless. The game installed, and David logged in to continue his quest, while I started creating my account under the new player tutorial. According to David, in this large online game called Battle of the Sages, there were 3 major factions: humans, demons, and monsters. Humans could either cultivate to become immortals or fall into demonic paths. Within the demon and monster factions, there were hundreds of different classes to choose from. I was completely confused. It had only been a few years, but I felt like I couldn't understand anything anymore, especially the various explanations that were so abstract. Either letters replaced words or they used homophones as puns. I recognized every word, but the full sentence just didn't make sense to me. I really don't know how the internet world has evolved in the past few years. I asked, "Son, what species are you playing?" David was speechless. He replied, "It's called a faction, just recently harmonized." The next second, David tilted his chin up, a proud and smug look on his face as he introduced, "I'm a demon, and my class is Chariot. I was surprised. "You're a car. Is this a racing game?" David rolled his eyes in annoyance. "Old man, You really need to catch up. 2 years ago, they harmonized the word for death, so now we use warrior instead. In Chinese, warrior and death sound the same, so they banned the word warrior too. So, we just use the chess piece chariot to replace it. Since it's too common to be harmonized, it's still the same meaning. Chariot refers to warriors or even to death warriors. So, for example, if I say, this chariot has been charioted, it means this warrior has died. Or I can say, this chariot is mine, meaning this warrior is my death warrior. But it got too confusing, so they harmonized the word death back but kept warrior. Do you get it? I replied, I get it. It's like a warrior dies for his comrade. A car dies for his car owner, right? He nodded, somewhat indifferent. I was pleased and said, I didn't know my son was so good at linguistics. While I praised him, I also gave him a flick on the forehead and said, don't roll your eyes when you're talking to people. Be more polite. David shouted, what are you doing? He covered his head and turned away, his hand leaving the keyboard. As a result, his chariot was killed by a monster. David pursed his lips, looking like he was angry but didn't dare to speak out. I quickly apologized. Sorry, I won't flick you during battle next time. Then I added, we'll settle it after the battle ends. Probably because no one had ever paid this much attention to his feelings. David stood there for a while, then turned to me and awkwardly said, it's fine. In the end, I chose the simplest looking human faction, planning to walk the path of cultivation and alchemy. I just started in the newbie village and completed my first quest, but before I could hand the loot to the village chief, I was ambushed by a level 7 player with the nickname Newbie Killer. Game over. Looking at the blood-red screen, I slammed my hand on the table. I muttered, damn, dance. Thankfully, I controlled myself and didn't curse. David was startled by the sound. He asked, old man, what's with the sudden outburst? At that moment, I saw the newbie killer on the screen looting the items dropped from my character's corpse and performing a mocking dance. Furious, I frantically clicked the resurrection button. I got ambushed in the newbie village, and this guy is dancing next to my corpse. David didn't say anything. Once I revived, I saw a huge monster furiously chasing the newbie killer. Each attack was a critical hit, and the monster camped at the resurrection point. It killed the newbie killer, bringing his level down to 1. The level 59 demon, Invisible Man, finally left his corpse behind and walked over to me. On the demon's huge horns, a message appeared. Invisible Man says, go dance. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, until I saw Invisible Man dance next to the newbie killer's corpse, mocking him. I turned to see David beside me, wearing a serious expression. I patted his shoulder and gave him a thumbs up, as expected of a male lead, playing so casually at such a young age, because I couldn't understand all the abstract game descriptions. I was playing in a muddled way. David simply took over, helping me complete quests. Every time I praised him with "That's my son," he gradually became more self-assured, his lips curling into an uncontainable smile. By the end of the day, with David's chariot clearing the path, I quickly leveled up to level 9. While David killed monsters, I focused on alchemy, and my alchemy skill reached level 4, but it still felt slow, so I waved my hand and spent money to buy premium gear, outfitting both mine and David's characters from head to toe. It's a joke, I've never been short on money, even if my luck and health haven't always been on my side. Willow now manages a company that I built from the ground up. All her connections and resources come from me. If I can give, I can take it back. The reason I haven't divorced Willow immediately is that I want to leave all of this undivided inheritance to David. So, whether that assistant named Makoto is a simp or just wants to take advantage of my family's success, he's got it wrong. If he dares to lay a hand on my son's future inheritance, he's asking for trouble. But just as I was distracted by these thoughts, the screen once again turned blood red. I was killed again. The premium gear was still intact, but all the painstakingly crafted potions I had gathered were looted by 3 demons. David, who had been helping me with the quest, turned around when he saw I had been killed and angrily shouted, "Old man, have you lost your mind?" I calmly replied, "First of all, I'm your father, not old man. If you don't want to call me dad, you can call me Wang Ji. Respect is the foundation of communication. Second, you owe me a head flick." David grimaced but immediately rushed to help me get revenge. The 3 demons didn't expect me to have such a strong ally. They were no match for David and quickly begged for mercy through private chat, promising to return my potions. But David ignored their pleas, continuing to strike quickly and ruthlessly, each blow more vicious than the last. I turned to watch David. His lips were straight, his eyes clear, his actions were decisive, showing no mercy or hesitation. I felt both proud and worried at the same time. For a while, I had been thinking about the reason for David's tragic end. Now, I understood, it was that inner conflict. On the surface, he seemed to dislike me as a father, yet still helped me. He appeared to enjoy killing and torturing others, but at the root, It was his way of seeking justice for me. Simply put, he has feelings but refuses to express them. Not expressing his emotions means rejecting those feelings, because he doesn't think he should feel them. David grew up without a father, and his mother disliked him. Unlike an orphan, who has no emotional attachments, David had someone to care about, but no outlet for his feelings. This led to a distortion in his understanding and expression of emotions. When he didn't get the emotional support he wanted, he tried to become heartless, so that he wouldn't feel pain from unfulfilled expectations. To put it simply, if someone's emotional expressions aren't reciprocated, they naturally become inclined not to express those feelings. If feeling emotions always comes with pain, they will try to avoid them. But while people can control how they express their emotions, they can't control the emotions themselves. They still arise, even if they try to suppress them. In this conflict between his will and emotions, the female lead became both the person he loved and the source of his pain. This would inevitably lead to his tragic ending with her. In short, what I need to do is ensure he gets positive feedback when expressing his feelings. Maybe because I was watching him too intently, David didn't finish killing the 3 demons until their levels weren't reduced to 0. When they revived, they yelled at me, "You bastard, you better wait." Then they immediately teleported away. I laughed and said to David, "They're calling for their dad." How childish. David's face turned dark. What they mean is their guild leader. He's the leader of the Overlord Army, a guild that was just established, but their leader is strong. So the guild is growing quickly. I understood. So, I've offended this guild. Huh. I smiled slightly. That's fine. Everyone's been in guild wars before. If he can recruit people, so can I. Who doesn't have a guild? Quickly add me to yours. David sneered and said, "I don't have a guild." Then he tilted his chin and added, "Those ordinary people aren't worthy." I swore. I really couldn't believe it. No guild. But still acting so arrogantly, bullying others at will. How did he even level up this fast? But then I remembered, he's the male lead. So it all makes sense. Thinking I was bluffing, David awkwardly added, "It's fine. Most guild leaders are busy. They don't have time to settle personal scores." However, the so-called guild leader had clearly run into some trouble and needed a way to vent. I looked at the player named Ito, the leader of the human cultivator faction, and his companion, the demon white fox named Lu. I was stunned and paused for a moment, thinking for 2 seconds. It was obvious, they were Makoto and Willow. What a coincidence. This world is so small. We just had a face-off in real life, and now we're facing off in the game. Ito says, "So you're the ones bullying people from the Overlord Army?" I was drinking water when I saw this overly dramatic line and couldn't help but spit it out. Lu says, "You're too much. A level 59 player bullying a few level 13s. David coldly typed in response, "So what?" I wiped the water from my mouth and glanced at David. He didn't seem to realize that this couple in front of him was his real mother and his future stepfather. I thought about it for a moment but didn't expose them. Instead, I took another sip of water, the glass tapping against my teeth, and the sound echoed clearly in my mind. 5 years ago, Willow loved me the most, and I loved her the most. From youthful love in school to stepping into the marriage hall together, we promised to stay together forever. At that time, I was madly in love with her, her beauty, her intelligence, her soul, her loyal love for me. So much so that when the out-of-control car came speeding toward us, my first instinct was to push Willow away. I pushed her away, and then I fell into a deep slumber, in that dream I could never wake up from. I helplessly watched as she tangled with the so-called replacement for my first love and eventually ended up with him. Love, I loved. Hate, I hated. But no matter how much love or hate there was, 5 years were enough to wear it all down. Now, my heart is calm, eerily calm. Calm like a lake frozen over on a winter night. No matter how the winds howl above, it stirs not a single ripple. Only David remains, my little fish at the bottom of the lake. As his father, I only want to accompany him as much as I can in the limited time I have left. Under my watchful gaze, David furrowed his brow, glancing at me before quickly looking away. He said, "Old man, Wong, stop staring at me. Look at the screen. If we can't win, we'll run." I nodded. It sounded easy, but Makoto's character was level 74. Even Willow's fox demon had reached level 36. While I was barely at level 15, I didn't think we'd be able to run away. Sure enough, as soon as the fight started, Makoto and Willow's coordination was seamless. Makoto unleashed a deadly combo on David, while Willow came at me from behind. But I didn't directly fight Willow. I kited her, circling around while healing David and controlling Makoto. David understood right away and swiftly dodged Makoto's attacks, then used a series of quick moves to defeat Willow, who had been chasing me down. The situation quickly became 2 versus 1. Makoto paused, taken aback for a moment, but quickly refocused his fire on me, charging straight at me. I tried to dodge, hoping to trick him with some angle manipulation and set up David for another attack. But in the next second, he landed a basic attack and took me out. full health and all. I was speechless. I lay there as a corpse in front of David, who showed no reaction, calmly healing himself. His dark eyes, steady and clear, remained unfazed. What does it look like when a stepfather fights a brat? Makoto, level 74, should have easily crushed David, level 59, but David fully utilized his demon race advantages, playing cunningly and swiftly, able to go toe-to-toe with Makoto for half an hour, even with low health. Meanwhile, I just lay there, lazily watching, ordering a full meal of delicacies like a king. I casually showed off some crab while spectating. Of course, given their level difference, a miracle didn't happen. David was killed by Makoto. The massive demon body lay before the human characters like a black mountain, sending an unspoken air of intimidation through the screen. I patted David's shoulder and asked, "Son, what do you think of that guy Ito's skills?" David withdrew his hand from the keyboard, expressionless, and answered, "Not impressive. Good, very good. If you don't accept defeat, there's always a chance on the battlefield. I've seen many people who lost for the first time and ended up always losing to the same person. It's not because their opponent is stronger, but because that first defeat leaves such a strong impression that they've already lost mentally before the next match even begins." I was pleased with David's response. I handed him a fried chicken leg with a smile and asked, "What about your old man?" While biting into his chicken leg, he said, "The noob of noobs." I was speechless. Then, a sharp slap to the head came out of nowhere. Such false praise of a filial son required swift punishment. As soon as Makoto came to confront us, many spectators had already gathered around. Now that Makoto had killed David, the people from the Overlord Guild were cheering, showering praises on the guild leader. The 3 Demon Clan members who had previously been taunting Makoto now began to shout, demanding that Makoto take turns bullying me and David. But Makoto didn't take the bait. To everyone's surprise, he waited for us to respawn before offering an olive branch. Ito said, "You guys have some skills. How about joining our Overlord Guild? I'll forgive your previous actions against my subordinates and give you a chance to fully utilize your talents in our guild." This demeanor, this vision, left the onlookers stunned and praising him endlessly. They marveled. The guild leader truly is the guild leader. I raised an eyebrow, noticing how big Makoto's ambitions and aspirations must be. Would a mere assistant position in real life satisfy such an appetite? Meanwhile, David, cheeks stuffed with food, casually typed without a second thought, "Invisible Man says, no." David's refusal immediately riled up the crowd. The Overlord Guild members cursed David for being ungrateful, asking how dare he reject an invitation from their mighty guild leader. The atmosphere became tense again, but Willow stepped in to mediate. She approached my character and said, "Lou says, hey there, I see you're probably a new player. How about joining our Overlord Guild? If you go with the cultivation and healing path, we'll provide free medicinal herbs and resources." A system prompt appeared. "Player Lou has invited you to join the Overlord Guild. Do you accept?" As the invitation popped up on the screen, I was holding crab with my left hand and skewers with my right, so I could only click the mouse with the back of my hand. Click. I agreed. David swallowed his chicken leg and furrowed his brows. "You can leave the guild if you clicked by mistake," I replied. "I didn't click by mistake." I handed him a skewer, saying, "Herbs are hard to gather. Since joining gives you free access, why not take advantage of it?" I paused, then added, "I'm not one to stick to principles. If there's something worth lowering my head for, I'll do it. If you're constantly at war with your own conscience and lose important people or things, it's not worth it." I thought to myself. Besides, I was here to further investigate this cliched storyline of a rich woman falling for a poor guy. How exciting. I didn't say that out loud, only smirking with a sarcastic grin. The moment I joined the guild, I noticed a golden title above Willow's head, Guild Leader's Wife. I glanced at the title Guild Leader above Makoto's head and couldn't shake the feeling that something green should be appearing above mine. Makoto approached me and extended his hand. "Ito says, welcome to our big family." Big family. Huh. This wolf in sheep's clothing was clearly obvious. I immediately typed, replying, "Name, your father before he dies, joined the Overlord Guild." Name, your father before he dies, says, "Thank you, big brother." David, who had been eating like a little hamster, suddenly choked and finally understood why I had chosen the name, your father before he dies. On the other end of the game, Makoto seemed to be momentarily caught off guard, and the entire guild fell silent. At that moment, Willow, perhaps wanting to ease the tension, walked up to David and said, "Lou says, Invisible Man, your friend has already joined the Overlord Guild. Why don't you join us too?" Heart emoji. This time, I was the one who choked. Invisible Man. Huh. Leave David alone, he's only 7. Was it because of Willow's calling him brother or that heart emoji? Either way, Makoto stepped in and grabbed Willow's hand. "Ito says, Lou, if he doesn't want to join the Overlord Guild, Then let it be. You don't need to beg him like this. I was speechless. He really couldn't bear it, could he? So, I typed, if I may ask, are you two a couple in real life? At this, one of the Overlord Guild members immediately responded, no. Our guild leader and guild leader's wife are both new to online dating. It's like elementary school romance. Oh my. It's so sweet it's killing me. Another chimed in. I heard the guild leader's wife is a standard white, rich, and beautiful type. The guild leader really is lucky. This must be what they mean by winning a white, rich, and beautiful woman and reaching the peak of life. Willow seemed a bit embarrassed by everyone teasing her. She pulled her hand away from Makoto's and distanced herself slightly before typing. That's not true. We only started because of the system rewards. We haven't met in real life yet. But Makoto, ever so domineering, pulled Willow back to him, hugging her. This time, she didn't pull away. Everything was unspoken. Wow. This amount of information was enough to burn my brain's CPU. So, in the game, Willow and Makoto didn't know each other's real identities. Ito and Lou, it's obviously them. Are they really that blind? Not seeing it. I incredulously pointed to the screen and asked, son, take another look at their names. Do you recognize who they are? David furrowed his brows, staring at them for a moment before replying impatiently. There are so many people playing this game. How would I know just by seeing two random players? I immediately felt relieved. If even David, the little protagonist, couldn't see it, then this must be some kind of unavoidable plot force. But what if Willow was using Makoto as a substitute in real life, and it seemed they were developing feelings for each other? So in the game, Willow marries Makoto's character, pretending to be strangers while flirting online. I thought it through. This is a love quadrangle, isn't it? Then, a guild member said, hey, I just saw that the official event will organize a big offline meetup next month. Won't that be a chance to meet in real life? Someone else replied, yeah, I can't wait to see the offline couple goals of our guild leader and guild leader's wife. I immediately went online to check. The large meetup organized by the official Saint War team was indeed next month, and the location wasn't far by car. Willow and Makoto meeting offline. Could I get in on this? With a mischievous grin, I urged, if the guild leader and guild leader's wife come to the offline meetup, I'll let Invisible Man join the Overlord Guild. David was speechless. He gave me a questioning look and asked with a fierce expression, why are you using me as a bargaining chip? I rubbed his head fiercely, messing up his hair, and said, give your old man some face. David blushed, pressed his lips together, and turned away. He reluctantly typed on the keyboard. David replied to Makoto, as your father before he dies said. This was a way to give Makoto an out. In the end, Makoto agreed to attend the offline meetup, and Willow also confirmed she would join. David accepted the invitation and officially joined his stepfather's Overlord Guild. Everyone in the guild knew David's strength. His addition was a massive boost to the guild's power, and the three Demon Clan members who had been shouting for revenge recognized their position and wisely fell silent. The guild atmosphere quickly became harmonious, and everyone eagerly awaited the offline event next month to meet their comrades in real life. Looking at the group, all praising Willow and Makoto, calling him guild leader and her guild leader's wife, I couldn't help but smile. It was a pure smile, without even the slightest hint of mockery. David noticed my smile and suddenly seemed upset. You seem really interested in those two. I nodded. Of course. It's like watching a drama that's still airing. He snorted, turning away, his voice barely audible as he muttered, they're not as interesting as me. I was confused. What? Who are you talking about? No one. David blushed, embarrassed. He stood up, trying to leave. I grabbed him like a monkey scooping up a fish, threatening, speak your mind, or you'll never get a wife. I immediately reached down to tickle his feet. David froze for a second, then broke into laughter, twisting and turning, trying to hold back his laughter. Tears streamed down his face as he gasped, okay, I'll tell you. Finally, I let go, my hands still firmly under his armpits to prevent him from running. Spill it. David was gasping for breath, his face as red as a tomato. He said, instead of looking at them, you should look at me more, I'm your son. By the end, David simply closed his eyes, looking as if he were too embarrassed to live, ready to die at any moment. I couldn't help but laugh genuinely, and I reached over to rub his little head. Good boy. That's the spirit. If something's on your mind, just say it. Don't mumble or bottle it up. Think about it. If you hadn't said this today, and tomorrow, your old man suddenly drops dead, would you feel regret? David, who had just opened his eyes, was desperately trying to escape my rubbing. But when he heard my ominous words, his eyes widened, and he immediately snapped. Shut up. I gave him 2 light taps on the head and said, you little rascal, that's one for before, and now one more. Did those 2 taps teach you how to speak to your father? David, ignoring the pain on his head, stubbornly glared at me. I won't let you talk like that. You're not going to die. I couldn't help but laugh. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm a human, and humans die. It's the natural order. David's body stiffened. His little fists clenched. For the first time, he threw a little tantrum and said, I don't care, you're not allowed to die. I paused, realizing that my earlier analogy had been too much and scared David, who had only recently started to open up. Sighing, I extended my finger seriously. All right, it's my bad. I promise you I won't die this year. Humans are fragile, but also resilient. What do you think? Want to make a pinky promise? David's eyes turned slightly red, and he mumbled something about superstition, but still hooked his finger around mine. Pinky swear. 100 years. No change. Wait, why only a year? David, slow to catch on, tightened his grip on my finger. I rubbed his head with my other hand, cleared my throat, and said, because Dad's powers are limited, and I can only predict for a year. As for the future, maybe by then my powers will be stronger, and I can predict 100 years. David responded, and your powers? You're just trying to trick me. He finally let go of my hand, mumbling as he did, but a smile finally appeared on his lips. A month passed quickly in the game. During this time, Willow came to visit me several times, but I had the caregiver chase her off. Willow, hurt and angry, thought I was silently grieving and punishing her by giving her the cold shoulder. Little did she know, I was just busy playing games with David, not caring about her at all, having been neglected by me, who was her unforgettable first love and husband. Willow shifted her infatuation to the game, focusing all her attention on the kind and gentle Ito. As the relationship between them grew more ambiguous, it reached the point where even a passing dog would have burped and walked away. Sometimes I would take screenshots as proof, but most of the time, I just felt it was too cringy to watch and focused on leveling up, making money, and crafting potions. Before long, I used my money to level up to 69 and became the first person in the entire server to max out the alchemy skill. There were many rare potions that only I could craft successfully, and some players were willing to pay real money to buy them from me. Quite a few even started thinking about murdering me for my items. But after a dozen or so players who had tried to take me down ended up dead, everyone knew that the player called, "Your dad died before," was always followed by a mysterious invisible man who was ruthless and held grudges. Anyone who pissed him off would find themselves being chased all over the server like a mad dog. After our infamous reputation spread, the guild I led quickly grew from a few hundred members to over 1,000, becoming one of the top guilds on the server. People are always drawn to the strong, and with my endless spending, my influence in the guild began to overshadow that of Makoto, the guild leader. There was even a time when the leader was offline, and Willow came to me, asking me to take her to do a dungeon. I brushed her off. Makoto seemed to sense a threat and tried several times to talk to me, but I turned him down. After all, I had already spoken with him in real life and knew that his so-called justice was nothing more than a joke. I didn't want to waste my precious game time. One day, I had just woken up from a nap when I saw David glaring at the computer screen with a fierce look on his face. I yawned, got up from the bed, and asked, "What's going on?" Got stuck on a level. Since I thought I'd probably only live for a year, I hadn't told my parents and brother in C City that I had woken up, not wanting to disturb their lives, which were just beginning to recover from their sorrow. Willow, for reasons I didn't know, also hadn't revealed that I had woken up. So, the world still believed that Wang was a vegetable, silently lying in a hospital bed. In reality, I had long since moved out of the hospital, bought a well-decorated villa, and moved in with David, setting up my bedroom as an esports room. From then on, we lived a carefree life filled with games. Of course, David still had to go to school. I didn't need to worry about his self-discipline. While David was at school, I hired a professional gamer to help him level up. Since it was the weekend, David was home today. I leaned over to look at David's screen, and David tried to block me, but I simply pushed his hand away. What I saw on the official forum for the game, Battle of the Sages, was a post that went viral. The title read, "Shocking. The alchemy god, your dad died before, specializes in married women, not only stealing the guild leader's wife but also leading a rebellion." I instantly woke up from my drowsiness. I was speechless. Is this even a joke? Rebellion? Stealing someone's wife? What is this nonsense? David quickly grabbed my arm with his small hands and tried to pull me away. It's just some trash talking, nothing to see. I patted his hand and said, "I know it's slander, but, as the saying goes, know your enemy and know yourself, and you'll win every battle. If you don't understand how they're attacking you, how can you effectively counterattack?" David pursed his lips and fell silent. I scrolled through the page, reading at lightning speed. This viral post was long, with images and evidence, and its rhetoric was highly manipulative and inflammatory. The gist of the post was that after I joined the Overlord Guild, I had secretly been flirting with the guild leader's wife, Lou, using my power and influence to isolate the real guild leader, Ito. The post included 2 images. The first was of me publicly rejecting Makoto's request for a conversation, with his in-game character looking dejected, as if utterly defeated. The second image was of Willow asking me to help her with a dungeon run, and her character had used a cute, flirty gesture toward me. Scrolling further, the comments were filled with angry bystanders who were quick to sympathize with Ito and curse me out. Many labeled me a disgrace to the gaming community, accusing me of seducing another man's wife just because I had money, and trying to take over a guild that someone else had worked so hard to build. They called me a shameless villain, someone who had crossed moral boundaries, saying I was bound to be trending on the hot search soon. Some even went as far as to call me the modern-day Shiman Ching, wishing me an untimely death. There were also numerous personal threats aimed at me. David, unable to stand it anymore, reached out and slammed the laptop shut. He lowered his head, biting his lip in deep silence. I sighed, squatted down, and looked David in the eye. Let me guess. Right now you're thinking, why are they saying all these things about me? You're wondering why there's nothing you can do, and you're feeling upset and sad for me, right? If it had been the old David, he would have stayed silent, never expressing his feelings, choosing to keep everything bottled up inside. But after a month of subtle guidance, David was slowly opening up and wasn't afraid to share what was on his mind. He nodded slowly. Once the floodgates opened, David's eyes turned red with emotion. He felt helpless, sad for me, and even more so for not being able to think of a way to help me through this sadness. No matter how smart David was, he was still just a child. I ruffled his hair and encouraged his honesty, urging him to look me in the eyes. Having sympathy for others is a good thing, and it's important to understand how others feel. But, son, you also need to understand that sometimes, beyond personal ability, trust is another kind of power. You see, I'm George, the one who once saved the Wong family corporation from collapse. This little issue, it's nothing. If you can't trust your dad, who can you trust? David stared at me blankly, then nodded with determination. I smiled in approval. Good boy. You need to understand that leaving a little leeway in front of others can lead to future trouble. But if you've already made an enemy, you don't uproot the weeds. They'll grow back. Do you know what a counterattack is? Right. David nodded, still a little confused. Although the post was deleted less than 2 hours after being published, by the time it was taken down, it had already accumulated millions of views. By the next day, nearly everyone attending the Battle of the Sages meetup knew about it. The event organizers had gone all out, customizing exclusive headbands for all the attendees, with a glowing nameplate on top, just like the in-game characters, showing each player's nickname. So when the crowd saw Makoto, with Ito above his head, they gave him the warmest welcome, surrounding him in a circle, showering him with compliments about how handsome and young he was. Then when Willow, the so-called rich and beautiful lady, appeared, the crowd's attention immediately turned to the 4 characters above her head. Lou. The audience erupted in a deafening cheer, and the atmosphere hit a fever pitch. Willow's in-game character was a seductive, curvaceous fox demon, but in real life, she looked pure and innocent. The contrast between the two made it impossible for any male players to take their eyes off her. Amid the chaos of cheers, Willow's eyes, however, were fixed on Makoto. When their gazes met, and they both saw the nicknames above their heads, there was a moment of surprise, followed by understanding, and an overwhelming rush of emotion flooded their hearts. It was you. It was really you. They both smiled at each other, as if their souls had already entwined. After the initial shock and cheers, the crowd couldn't help but whisper to each other, "Ah, what kind of storyline is this? This is better than any romance novel." But then someone said, "I heard Willow has a husband, doesn't she?" "I think her husband's some kind of rich heir," another person replied. "I remember her husband was in a car accident and turned into a vegetable. That was years ago, so either he's gone or they've already divorced." Someone else added, "I know. Her husband's name was George. Before the accident, he was known as the rich heir, and I've seen pictures of him. He actually looks a lot like Makoto. It's such a shame. He was a good guy." "Well, there's nothing that can be done. He's a vegetable now. Can't stop her from moving on to someone better, can they?" Since the officials had confiscated everyone's phones, no one could go online to verify or take pictures. So, as the sweet interaction between Willow and Makoto unfolded, everyone was on edge, waiting for what would happen next. At that moment, I made my entrance, wearing the name "Your Dad Died Before" above my head, with David, whose nickname was Invisible Man, by my side. The moment I stepped in, it felt like a bomb had gone off in the entire venue. People immediately began discussing loudly, "I can't believe it. What the hell? The Invisible Man who made me rage quit is just an elementary school kid. Wait, isn't that young Master Wong? If he's Your Dad Died Before, then Makoto is the real scum." "Yeah, exactly. What a shameless scoundrel. Completely crossed the line, twisted the facts, and treated us like fools. And Willow, what's wrong with her? She has a husband but is playing lovey-dovey in the game. How disgusting." "Exactly. What's even crazier is that she shamelessly shows up in real life. How dare she? Amidst the chaos, I slightly curled my lips in a cold smile and fixed my gaze on Willow, whose face had turned as pale as a ghost. The expression on her face was even more terrifying than encountering a ghost in the middle of the night. As for Makoto, it seemed like he realized something. He was shaking so badly that he collapsed to the ground, his legs giving way. The crowd, avoiding him like the plague, scattered, leaving him kneeling awkwardly in the center. I laughed softly and turned to David, asking, "So, how's that for a plot twist? Pretty satisfying, right?" David snorted dismissively. It's okay." Willow, her face drained of color, was trembling all over, but she still reached out to try and approach me, walking like she was floating. Husband, please let me explain." But just a few steps in, Willow suddenly doubled over and vomited violently, her hands instinctively clutching her stomach. At this point, everyone, being adults, knew exactly what was going on. Even David, still young, could immediately tell what was wrong. David coldly declared, "She's pregnant." I curled my lips in disdain and looked at Willow, who was frozen in shock. "Is this your explanation?" Willow's face was vacant, and she finally couldn't hold on any longer, collapsing onto the vomit, completely losing all strength. I closed my eyes, grabbed David's hand, and started walking away. "So disgusting. Let's go, son. I'll take you to the amusement park." David didn't even glance at Willow. He no longer held any expectations for this so-called mother, and simply tightened his grip on my hand. "Fine. I'll reluctantly go with old Wong." Chapter 4. I spent the whole day at the amusement park with David, and by the time we got up the next morning, it was already very late. I threw on a simple white tank top, slid into some flip-flops, and lazily walked to the living room. There, sitting patiently after waiting for 3 hours, was Makoto. The moment I entered the room, Makoto, who already had a straight back, seemed to stiffen even further, as if he was a little sprout bravely enduring the harsh cold. I lazily flopped onto the sofa, and the housekeeper brought me a cup of freshly brewed mate tea at the perfect temperature. I sipped it slowly, noticing that Makoto hadn't had a single sip of water in the 3 hours he'd been waiting. I could clearly see his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. I placed the tea down, took out my checkbook, and started doodling on it with a pen before tearing the check off with a snap and slamming it onto the table. Makoto, as if he had been waiting for this moment, snatched the check up and tore it to shreds like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. His gaze was firm, and he puffed his chest out dramatically, saying, "I, Makoto, am not a man who forgets his principles for money. You think you can bribe me with money? What a joke. My relationship with your wife is stronger than gold. You will never buy my loyalty with money." He cleared his throat when he saw I didn't respond, then continued, "I'm nothing like you, George, a spoiled playboy who drowns in vice. I'm not interested in Willow's beauty or her body. It's her soul. Do you understand? We are true soulmates." I let out an indifferent "oh" and casually popped a dumpling into my mouth, which the housekeeper had just brought me. Makoto's face contorted for a second, his jealousy and resentment so apparent that I could almost feel them in the air. He quickly scanned my mansion, his envy burning in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Stop pretending, George. I know you're pretending not to care. You're in love with Willow. Just admit it. Willow already told me that what she hates most about you is your smug attitude. What are you pretending for? Your wife is with me now. You must be so jealous, right?" Makoto, with the air of a victor, crushed the torn check underfoot and laughed triumphantly. "You lost. Admit it. The child in Willow's belly is mine. She'll divorce you and marry me, no matter how much money you offer. You can't change this fact. You're the real loser." I was speechless. How can a mistress talk so much? I finished the last 3 dumplings and looked at him, bewildered. "No, you're thinking too much. Why would I give you money? Just take a look at what's written on the check." Makoto froze, and with a strange expression, he lowered his gaze to the check at his feet. On the messy torn paper, a few words were clearly spelled out. "One pile of shit." Makoto's face turned instantly green, as if he had actually stepped into a pile of crap. In fact, the paper wasn't even a check, it was a bill. I chuckled. "I heard you got drunk last year, thinking you had hooked a rich woman, and ran off to gamble it all away, racking up a huge debt. You only managed to escape with Willow's help, and that's why the debt collectors didn't chop off your fingers." I watched as Makoto's face went from green to ashen, his eyes now filled with fear. I continued, "Have you ever wondered why Willow, who loves you so much, refuses to divorce me and marry you to help you pay off your debt? You don't really think she's wealthy, do you? You don't seriously believe she's some big-time CEO? She's just a trophy wife. The Wong family's company is called Wong, not Lu. You can ask her right now if she dares to leave me." At that moment, David walked in, holding a giant drumstick in each hand, munching happily. I waved at him, and reluctantly, he walked over and handed me one of the drumsticks. He made a face and said, "Wong bro, You're all grown up and still stealing food from kids. How childish. Ignoring the little brat's teasing, I continued munching and spoke to Makoto. Fine. Whatever I say, you won't listen. Let your soulmate tell you herself. With that, I pushed open the slightly ajar door, revealing Willow, who looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. When she saw Makoto, there was a flash of hatred and viciousness in his eyes, as if he wanted to rush over and confront her, but couldn't bring himself to fully break the facade. But Willow didn't even look at him. Instead, she staggered over and collapsed at my feet, sobbing and begging. Husband, I was wrong. I was wrong. Please forgive me. That night I was really drunk. I thought he was you. Ugh. I sharply interrupted her. Stop crying. I don't have time for you to play the sympathy card. Get your mess sorted out first, then we'll talk. Willow's eyes were filled with tears, but she dared not cry too much, nor could she muster a smile. Finally, she remembered she had a son to appeal to and stumbled toward David, mumbling, David. David coldly interrupted her. This family doesn't need an illegitimate child. If you can't sort this out, this family doesn't need a mother either. Perfect. I couldn't help but want to clap for David. Willow staggered, as though struck by a heavy blow. Her face alternated between red and pale as she couldn't understand why her own son would treat her this way. He should have been the one closest to her, yet here he was, leaving her heartbroken and desperate. The woman who once shone like a diamond now appeared as worn and fragile as a leaf falling in the autumn wind. I couldn't be bothered to watch her performance and directly gave my instructions. Willow, I don't have time for you right now. I'm taking my son to class. When we return, if you've sorted this out, maybe I'll consider. Willow's eyes immediately brightened, like a dog wagging its tail and begging for mercy. Understanding the implication in my words, she excitedly said from behind me, Husband, I'll break up with Makoto right now. I won't keep the child either. I didn't respond, just walked out with David. Because of the earlier rumors, I had someone investigate Makoto's background. It turned out that the rumor post had indeed been created by him as part of a scheme to pressure Willow into binding herself to him through public opinion. Following the trail, I discovered that Makoto had realized Willow wasn't willing to divorce me and help him pay off his gambling debts. He thought it was because of a lack of feelings. So after learning that Willow was playing this game, he deliberately bought an account to coincidentally meet her, intending to use both online and offline tactics to pose as her soulmate and make her fall for him. As for the adult matters, Willow certainly wouldn't neglect protection. After all, if she ended up pregnant, she wouldn't be able to explain it to the Wong family and would be kicked out. So, the person who tampered with things was naturally Makoto. When we returned home, both of them were gone. I watched the security footage in the room with David. After Willow told Makoto that she wanted to break up and get an abortion, Makoto refused and grabbed her wrist tightly, not letting her leave. Makoto accused Willow of betraying him, and Willow accused Makoto of being a liar. They both blamed each other, like two dogs fighting with fur flying. The argument got worse and worse, and finally, Willow shouted that she wanted to completely sever ties with Makoto and told the debt collectors to kill him. Suddenly, Makoto lost it. He lunged at her and slapped her hard. Willow's high heel twisted, and her belly hit the edge of a table. Now, it was impossible not to go through with it. I turned off the monitor and closed my eyes, feeling an overwhelming wave of fatigue. It was like the ice on the lake cracking, the cold from the clouds creeping in, deepening the sorrow and freezing it further. The lover from my youth had ultimately decayed right before my eyes, and it felt as if I, too, was fading away. I was so tired, I just wanted to sleep forever. But at that moment, a small sensation touched the back of my hand. A voice rang out. Dad. David looked at me nervously, gripping my hand. He opened his mouth, his voice trembling, awkward, making my heart ache. He continued, calling out, Dad. Dad. I froze, my eyes suddenly becoming hot with tears. I responded, Dad. Yeah, Dad. Yes, I hear you. David cried, like a real child. He finally dared to cry freely. He sobbed uncontrollably, struggling to breathe, clutching my hand tightly, as though holding onto the dreamlike redemption. He said, Dad, I love you so much. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't help but close my eyes, my tears flowing like ice melting on the surface of a lake. I've heard that God cannot be everywhere. So he created fathers. Chapter 5. Given that time is running out, I'll take care of 3 things first. The first thing, Makoto has run away. Or perhaps he's been kindly invited by some of his friendly debt collectors to play a game of chop off your fingers. It's hard to say, isn't it? The second thing, Willow was sunk in the sea. But this story is actually quite bizarre. The incident at the Saints Battle fan meeting somehow leaked out. After my younger brother, who handles the dirty work in City C, heard about it, he rushed over without informing me first. He only told me afterward. He said he tied Willow up and sank her in the sea to stand up for me. Then the strange thing happened. Willow would sink, then float back up, sink again, and float up again. But when I heard this, I wasn't surprised. The novel's inevitable circumstances were at play. In the end, it seemed like she was taken away by some researchers for experiments. This can be considered a new method to address marital infidelity problems. The third thing, I'm getting sleepy again. I've been sleeping more and more every day, and not even the best doctors can help anymore. It's still the same story, because of the inevitable forces of the plot. The year is almost up. This past year, I've lived quite carefreely. The only regret is probably not being able to accompany David further. David has grown a lot over the past year, but I still worry that his lack of empathy might lead him down the wrong path. So I slept for an entire day and night, and finally came up with a solution. I said to him, "Here's the thing, son, when you're dealing with others, first check if they have a father. If you think they do, then imagine, if you were to treat them this way, would their father be upset? But if the person seems like they don't have a dad, well, don't hold back." David understood and remembered. That night, I had a dream. I dreamt that David met and fell in love with the female lead. Their relationship healthy and warm. No more tragedy, just a happy ending. I woke up with a smile of contentment, and saw that it was just dawn. David was sleeping quietly by my bed, his small hands tightly clutching my arm, his face streaked with tears. I silently watched his chubby little face, and suddenly remembered that long ago, he had been handed to me in the same way, eyes closed. That was when I first became a father, and I never expected that such a small child would truly shape my entire life. I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Son, the road ahead, you'll have to walk it on your own. But don't worry, someone will come into your life one day, and she'll light the fire inside you. I don't know when David woke up, but his eyes were filled with tears, as they adjusted to the light. Still, he stubbornly stared at me and asked, "Why, Dad, why can't you stay with me? We still have games to finish, so many things we can do together." I froze for a moment, looked at the bright and sunny sky outside, then smiled and ruffled his hair, saying, "Because your story is about to begin. Dad's magic is gone. Dad only exists in the past." Chapter 6. I closed my eyes, feeling like I had a very long dream. In the dream, the lake froze and thawed, the clouds in the sky rolled and unrolled. When I opened my eyes again, the lake rippled, and the blue sky was clear. I vaguely saw David running toward me with a smile, saying, "Dad, look, I caught a little fish too."